Welcome to the show. Thanks for joining in another week. We have a great show planned for you again this week. Later on, I'll have a guest with me, Rabbi Joshua Leaf from Temple Shalom here in Wheeling. We'll be talking about the very sad events that took place in Pittsburgh over this past weekend and how the Wheeling community is rallying around those who were suffering as a result of this tragic event. But first, we'll start off with some of our usual features. And been talking about the election that will take place next week for really the better part of the year, to be quite frank. You know, we've talked about it a lot on this show over different time periods, had even some people running for office here as guests on the show, but now the election is upon us. Early voting's been underway, and next Tuesday, everyone will go to the polls and decide who some of our leaders will be in the years to come. And I want to talk about a few of these races, and the ones that I want to talk about are the ones where I know some people personally that are running for office. I don't like to necessarily talk about an election or a race where I don't know the people or who I'm going to vote for or not, but I do want to talk about these people I know because I know them personally, and some of them I've known a very long time. And first of all, I want to start with the Senate race here in the 1st District in West Virginia. Bill Ehlenfeld is someone that I've known a very, very long time. His mother was one of my teachers in junior high at Triadelphia Junior High. A very, very fine teacher, one that I've said before that some of the many things that I still rely upon today, which are writing skills for the job that I do, were taught to me by her. I had her for yearbook class. I then went on to become, one of the editors of the yearbook and newspaper at Wheeling Park High School, and then later on, the editor of the yearbook at the University of Notre Dame. And a lot of that started because of the things that she taught me when I was in junior high. But I got to know Mrs. Ehlenfeld, got to know her husband, who was a fine attorney for many years here in the Wheeling area, and their son Bill, who was a few years older than me, but got to know him as well. In fact, the first case that I ever tried in court, Bill was on the other side of. He was a prosecuting attorney, and really got to know him a little bit through that as well. And the one thing that I saw from Bill, and I've always seen throughout my life, including some of the mutual friends we have, is the great deal of respect that he has from so many of the people that know him well. When you talk about Bill, people should have the best things to say because he's a class act, a great individual, and that really isn't surprising because of the family that he comes from and what they've done for many years. Of course, his grandfather was the mayor of Wheeling decades ago. You go up to Ogilby, there's the Ehlenfeld Dining Room named after his grandfather, and they've just been a part of this community, a special part of this community for many years. And I think Bill would be a great state senator. He believes and has some ideas and things that really haven't been tossed out there by people necessarily in the past. He thinks we should have a drug czar, that, hey, we really want to go after this drug crisis. Let's have a drug czar, and that's their job, is to go after and tackle this crisis, and let's put a penny per pill tax on the pills coming into this state. Let's require the drug companies to disclose how many pills they're sending into West Virginia. Let's do these things. The second thing he said is let's have an inspector general. It would pay for itself to sort out and identify government waste, where our government's spending money it shouldn't be spending. You look at the renovations to the Supreme Court offices, been the subject of a lot of headlines this year. That doesn't happen if you have somebody that's looking out for that. Just on those offices alone, millions of dollars spent. And you're paying someone to be an inspector general, whatever they're paying, you recover that money itself by just not having the government waste. So he's coming up with new, fresh ideas of ways that we can help ourselves here in West Virginia. And then also, I think he's identified ways that we can improve the economy here locally. He's identified areas up in Hancock County where there's land available close to the Pittsburgh airport, close to the river, and we have that land sitting there that we should be marketing to outside companies saying, come in here to West Virginia, come in here to the Northern Panhandle, use this land. So I think Bill has a lot of great ideas. And then lastly, what I want to say is that he's for the teachers. He has family who's in education. His mother was an educator. His wife works in the schools. His sister is a teacher. You look at those things, and that's why so many of the educators are standing out in the streets. It's hard to go somewhere. I was in Brooke County on Sunday for my son's football game. There's Bill standing on the street with a bunch of teachers holding signs. You go to Elm Grove, go past McDonald's here in Ohio County. There's teachers standing out there with Bill Ehlenfeld signs. The education force in this Northern Panhandle is behind him, and as am I. So I wholeheartedly endorse Bill for the Senate race here in the 1st District. I also want to mention Sean Fluharty. I've gotten to know Sean over the past several years. He's a lawyer like I am, and he's handles a wide range of types of legal cases. But what's impressed me the most about Sean and his time in the legislature and the House of Delegates is that he's not afraid to speak his mind. So many times our legislators want to choose their words carefully for fear of offending anyone, and He doesn't do it in an offensive way. He doesn't insult anybody. He doesn't call names. He doesn't use poor language or anything like that. He just says strongly what he believes in and fights for people that he believes are the working people in West Virginia. And I think we need more people like that down there. And the other thing that I like about Sean so much, if you watch his floor speeches on the House of Delegates, if you watch what he has to say and some of the Facebook Live videos he does, he always uses facts to support his arguments. He'll give you the data. He'll say, here's what the facts show. They show A, B, C, D. And it's very difficult to argue with facts. I found that in my own experience as a lawyer, that if you set forth the facts and if the facts are on your side, it's very difficult to lose an argument when the facts are on your side. So Sean always makes sure that he has his facts there and that he's not afraid to present them in a persuasive way to convince other legislators as to why they should go a certain way, and that's really benefited people here in his district in Ohio County. So I wholeheartedly endorse Sean Fluharty for the House of Delegates as well. And then I want to mention Lisa Zukoff, who's running for the House of Delegates in the 4th Circuit. You know, one of the reasons that I like Lisa so much in that 4th Delegate District is that she's just been looking out for people and animals for so many years. And I mention animals because she's volunteered at the Marshall County Animal Shelter for a long time. I've gotten to know her a little bit through that. She's stood up for working class people. Even when she wasn't running for office, she was out there, trying to support families, working people, trying to build housing for people that may not be able to afford it otherwise. Her husband and herself own a small business in Marshall County, Accessories Limited, and they really are one of the people. And Lisa is not afraid to speak her mind. She's not afraid to do what's right, and she will do what's right. And I think she would be a great delegate. And the other thing I want to mention is I think we need more female delegates. We don't have enough of our female voices in our legislature in West Virginia. When you go down there, it's predominated by men, and I think we need to have that perspective. There's often times where a woman will bring a different perspective to the table that perhaps a man has not thought about. So I think that she would be an excellent choice, and I wholeheartedly endorse her in the 4th Delegate District here in West Virginia. And then lastly, I want to mention the Supreme Court. Of course, being a lawyer, a lot of people ask me who I'm supporting for Supreme Court, what I think about the candidates, and there are 2 seats that are open due to resignations of Justice Ketchum and Justice Davis. The first has been identified as the Division I seat. That's to replace Justice Ketchum. Now, it's important to remember, Governor Justice has appointed 2 people to these seats that are longtime politicians. Evan Jenkins, who was a United States Congressman, resigned from his United States congressional seat before his term was up to accept this seat because he was going to be out of office anyway because he'd already chosen to run for the United States Senate and lost in the primary. And then also Tim Armstead, who was the Speaker of the House of Delegates in West Virginia, the body that voted to impeach these justices that are being replaced, is the other person that was appointed. And that's part of the concern I have with these appointments, is that I don't like the idea of a governor getting to decide who is going to be in those spots and then us just basically rubber stamping the governor's choices. I think that this needs to be an election where the most qualified candidates who understand the law are the ones that are in those spots, because that's what we really want from Supreme Court justices, or people that have worked around the law, worked around our court system, understand it. And you look at the 2 people that have been appointed by the governor, and that's not necessarily the case. They've been working in politics for years and years. They really haven't utilized their law licenses to be in courtrooms. In fact, with respect to Justice Jenkins, his law license was even inactive for the past several years while he was in Congress. Because of that, I'm endorsing 2 other people. Division I, Joanna Tabbitt, who is a circuit court judge in Kanawha County down in Charleston. Interestingly, she's being supported by both plaintiffs' lawyers and defense lawyers, which is very, very unusual. You don't usually see lawyers on both sides of the fence supporting someone. And I think the reason that she's being supported by both is that she's been shown to be a fair judge who will listen to both sides and decide a case or an issue based upon the law. And that's what you really want as a lawyer. Someone that when you walk into their courtroom, they're going to listen to both sides and do what they think is right and just based upon the law. And she's shown that she can do that, and she's received widespread support because of that. So I'm endorsing Joanna Tabbitt for Supreme Court for the Division I seat. In the Division II seat, I'm endorsing someone who's right here in the Ohio County, in the Ohio Valley, and that's Jeff Kessler from Marshall County. Jeff Kessler's office is just down the street from my office in Moundsville. I've known him for a number of years, and he has done just about everything that you can do in the law. He's been a municipal court judge, did that for a decade and a half. He was an assistant prosecuting attorney in Marshall County for a number of years, was a special prosecutor in Ohio County, Wetzel County, and a number of other counties. He served as the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee when he was in the Senate, rose all the way up to lieutenant governor of the state of West Virginia, the number 2 ranking position in our government. He's done all these different things. He's done wills, adoptions, for young people, old people, and everything in between, criminal law, civil law. He understands the law, and he will rule and do things that are just based upon his knowledge of the law. And I also want to mention that we haven't had someone from the Northern Panhandle as a Supreme Court justice for quite some time. And I think it's time that we have representation on the Supreme Court from this part of the state, and he will be a fine justice. That's why I'm endorsing Jeff Kessler for the Division II seat. No matter what you do, please take your time to go to the polls and vote. You can make a difference. It's one of the both rights and responsibilities we have as citizens. So if you can't get out there on election day, get out there and vote early. That time is running out, but please just take, half an hour, go out there, even if it's your lunch break, get out, vote, do it before work, after work. Encourage your friends, family members to do the same, because we need to make sure that we have a voice in our government. We need to take a break. When we come back, I'll have my guest with me, Rabbi Joshua Leaf from Temple Shalom here in Wheeling. Stay with us on the Jamie Bordas Show.
Disasters happen. Pick the team that takes care of them all. Powered by offices in Wheeling, Morgantown, and Pittsburgh, Panhandle Cleaning and Restoration is ready to handle any size emergency at a moment's notice. We have the right people, knowledge, and equipment to respond 24 hours a day.
I'm Dana Hogerson. When disaster strikes your home or business, tell your insurance provider you prefer the restoration company the Mountaineers call, Panhandle Cleaning and Restoration.
Recommended by the highest authorities. Danoon Lumber.
It's like a bad one's coming. Yeah. Right?
Welcome back to the show. This is my favorite time each week when I have a guest with me, and this week's no different. I have with me Rabbi Joshua Leaf from the Temple Shalom here in Wheeling. And Rabbi, it's good to have you here.
Thank you so much.
Very difficult week, obviously, for the Jewish community here in the region and really across the country and around the world, with the shooting at the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh, and really kind of hits you when it's your own faith, and it's also very close to home.
It does, and it's particularly close to home in a number of ways. The Wheeling Jewish community is, of course, very close with the Pittsburgh Jewish community. We go there all the time. All of us have friends and family members who live in Squirrel Hill. And in fact, there are members of our congregation whose relatives were victims in the shooting. So it hits extremely close to home, and it's very personal for us. It's also terrifyingly, that is the point of terrorism, to scare people, it's terrifyingly close to home in that it wasn't one of the largest congregations in Pittsburgh. It was a smaller congregation that sits in a quiet corner of a residential neighborhood, and it sounds a lot like us. This is the sort of thing, a terrible attack that could happen at anyone's house of worship. The fact that it happened to be a synagogue was because the shooter hated Jews and wanted to make an anti-Jewish statement. But an attack on a house of worship is an attack on all people of all faiths. And so it's very close to home for all of us.
You make a good point there, Rabbi. With regard to that, it's got a lot of us left saying, what is going on here? What is happening, in our country that we have these types of attacks? I'm not Jewish, I'm Catholic by faith, but I felt it because, as you said, it's at a place of worship. And, you think that could be my place of worship. And, what does it say where we are right now in 2018 when we have these types of things happening?
Well, I think that the country certainly is divided, and we see that every day in the news. What worries me as an American is not just political divisiveness. We should certainly argue about important subjects, and we should argue strongly about things that matter to us. but we shouldn't argue violently, and we shouldn't be hurling condemnations at each other. That violence is problematic, because when that man went into the synagogue and killed people because he didn't like who they were and what we believe, we as Jews believe in decency, goodness, kindness, generosity. He took issue with the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, a long-standing Jewish organization that works to help immigrants and refugees with food and clothing and medicine, doing good for those who are most in need. That's something that we should all agree on, not something that should be dividing us. And when someone makes that kind of a statement, I would rather kill people who stand for something I don't agree, we're missing the bigger message, which was this was not just an anti-Jewish attack. This was a fundamentally anti-American attack. We as Americans believe in the freedom to assemble and the freedom to practice our religion as enshrined in the Bill of Rights. And the Declaration of Independence tells us that every person has an inalienable right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. His goal was to stamp out all of those for the victims of his shots. That's an attack on every American at the very core of who we are. My hope, and my firm belief, quite frankly, is that there are many, many more good people than bad people in our society. And that has been, to some extent, the silver lining to see the outpouring of support from across the community and from indeed around the country and around the world to say, I think that I'm right in believing there are many more good people than bad people in the world.
Well, I certainly think that you're right about that. And despite the difficulties of this week, I will continue to believe that that's true. We need to take a break. When we come back, we'll continue speaking with Rabbi Leaf about some of the things that he's done here in order to try to improve things in our world. Stay with us here on the Jamie Bordas Show.
When reviewing your oil and gas offers or royalty check statements, do you wonder, am I being offered a fair amount? Do I feel comfortable reading the statement? Do I have peace of mind? If you answered no to these questions, you need Bordas Mineral Management. Our passion is helping mineral owners protect and expand their mineral wealth. Our examiners tell you whether you're being treated fairly and getting paid what is rightfully yours. Bordas Mineral Management. Be protected. Have peace of mind.
You earned it. Let us help you save it. Belmont Savings Bank. Focused on your future.
Welcome back to the show. I've been speaking with Rabbi Joshua Leaf from Temple Shalom here in Wheeling. And, in the aftermath of the events of this weekend, you did something I thought was very interesting. You opened the temple to not just your members, but also to people of all faith, and said, hey, come on in here on Sunday. We're having an interfaith service. And you had, Catholic priests, you had ministers from different congregations, and all there to kind of come together. And, what caused you to do that? I mean, what led you to say, hey, this is the way we're going to approach this?
Well, I think it's really about our Jewish values. Abraham in the Bible is our spiritual ancestor. And in an irony beyond measure, the Torah portion, our scriptural portion, last Saturday, while the attack was happening in Pittsburgh, that week's scriptural portion is about Abraham, who runs to greet strangers who come by his tent and bring them food and water and invite them to rest on their way. Total strangers are welcomed in, and from this we learn that hospitality is a core Jewish value for us. The attack in Pittsburgh was meant to terrorize, and it worked. People were very afraid. Our congregants, people across the country, very afraid, asking, would we ever go back to temple again? And our answer can't be to succumb to that fear. Sure, we could close the doors, draw the blinds, lock the building up, and never have services again, but that's exactly the wrong thing to do. I said, let's open the building. Let's invite everyone. I reached out to as many folks as I could across the community, our civic leaders, my fellow faith leaders across the community, and we hoped that people would take us up on the invitation. As Jews, it's a core value for us to be welcoming. There's nothing that we do that's secret or closed or only for Jewish people. The truth is, every holiday, every worship service, every Sabbath, everything we do is open to anyone who would like to come. This was our way of saying we're all grieving. Everyone across religious lines, all of us as human beings, felt the sting of that attack. Let's all come together and in doing so find some sense of comfort, some sense of solace, some sense of community that had been shattered by the attack itself, that we could start rebuilding by getting together so immediately afterwards.
You and I go back a long way. We went to preschool together.
Indeed.
And junior high, high school, and you went on to have excellent schooling at Princeton University, and then went to seminary. Worked in places like Chattanooga, where you're rabbi there, and then Jacksonville, and coming back to Wheeling just a year and a half, and to have this type of thing happen. But another sad event, really, for the local Jewish community this week: the passing of Judge Arthur Recht, and very unexpectedly, and sad to see him go. A wonderful judge, a wonderful man, just a gentleman, everything he did. So certainly my condolences go out to the entire Jewish community, not only for the events that are occurring in Pittsburgh, but also the loss of one of its own members this week.
Thank you. It's a terrible loss. I've known Judge Recht since I was a child, and he was an amazing man, always ethical, decent, honest, good. You knew in your heart if he was going to try and do something, he was going to try and do the right thing. We've actually had many phone calls at Temple this week, folks offering us condolences on what happened in Pittsburgh over the weekend, and since Judge Recht's passing on Sunday evening and the announcements for his funeral tomorrow at Temple at 11 a.m., the calls have continued. And in fact, we've had two different calls of people saying, I lost a case in his courtroom, and I still think he was the most fair and decent guy I've ever met. He was amazing, and it's a terrible loss for our community and really for the whole state of West Virginia. He was a legal giant, and even more so, a very decent human being.
Well, I appreciate you being here on the show. I certainly wish you and the members of the Jewish faith here locally all the best, and certainly also condolences to Judge Recht's family, his wife Karen, and his children as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Jamie.
We need to take a break. When we come back, I'll be talking sports. Stay with us here on the Jamie Bordas Show.
So, how was your first day?
Long. So, Josh asked me about you.
Daddy's home. Go get him.
For your home, for your life, for more than 50 years. The Hardwood Specialists. DeNoon Lumber.
People in nursing homes are some of the most vulnerable members of our society. They're there because they can't take care of themselves. Those facilities have a duty to take care of our loved ones, and when they don't, it's important they're held accountable. We've not only collected record results against negligent nursing homes, but more importantly, we've helped so many families get the answers and closure they so badly needed.
Bordas and Bordas, fighting for justice.
Welcome to the show. It's time to talk sports, and we'll start off with the Pittsburgh Steelers. A big win over the Cleveland Browns this past weekend. James Conner with just an unbelievable day, making people say, do we really need Le'Veon Bell? And of course, the following day, the Cleveland Browns fire Hugh Jackson, their head coach, fire Todd Haley, offensive coordinator, who's only been there a few games after coming over from Pittsburgh last year. Now the Steelers maintain their lead in the AFC North with the big game against divisional rival Baltimore coming up this weekend, where the Steelers are looking to avenge that loss from earlier in the season. I think they have to get after Joe Flacco this time. They let him stand back there and throw it the first game. Got to get after him. I think they will. They'll pressure him this time. I think the Steelers will come away with a close but 3-point victory in Baltimore on the road to maintain that lead in the AFC North. Big news in college football this week is the college football Playoff committee's first rankings out for this year. Number 1, Alabama, no surprise there. Number 2, Clemson, a little bit of a surprise at 3 and 4, not so much the teams, but the order. Number 3, LSU, number 4, Notre Dame. And, all right, Notre Dame's my alma mater, so I'm a little biased here, but I really thought that Notre Dame should have been 2, not just 3. And I think that because if you look at being undefeated, number 1, and the number 2, I don't think Clemson's really played anybody yet. Notre Dame has the best win over the highest ranked team. They have a win over number 5 Michigan. So I really think Notre Dame should have been that spot. Maybe a little bit of a moot point because Alabama and LSU play this weekend, but that's the top 4. We'll see what happens now. And let's set out your college football Saturday for you. First at noon, Ohio State, after 2 weeks off and that loss at Purdue, gets back on track. They play Nebraska at noon on Fox. I think they'll get a big win here. They'll get themselves back in the right way. Then at 3:30, number 13, WVU at number 17, Texas on Fox. Mountaineers were awfully impressive against Baylor last week, but this is a different story. This is not Baylor. This is Texas, who's coming off a close loss that they're not going to be happy about. But I think that Will Greer and company are back on track for the Mountaineers. I think he'll throw for over 300 yards, and the Mountaineers get a big road win to be setting up that Black Friday Thanksgiving weekend game against Oklahoma in Morgantown. I like the Mountaineers this week. Also at 3:30 over on CBS right here in WTRF, number 6 Georgia at number 9 Kentucky. Biggest game in Lexington in decades. I think the Georgia offense is just going to be too much, though. I like Georgia big in this one. And then at 3:45, big game in the Big Ten, number 14 Penn State at number 5 Michigan on ESPN. Quarterbacks in this game, big story. Trace McSorley for Penn State, Shea Patterson for Michigan. Both have been playing well, but I think the Michigan defense is the difference, and they have the home field advantage. I like Michigan in a close one at home in this one. Then at 7:15, number 4 Notre Dame at Northwestern on ESPN. Northwestern has always given Notre Dame problems over the years. Northwestern, believe it or not, leading the Big Ten West right now by 2 games. I like Notre Dame, though, because of the balance on offense. Ian Book can throw the ball. Dexter Williams running the ball great. I like Notre Dame in that one. And then at 8 o'clock, the game everybody's been looking forward to, number 1 Alabama at number 3 LSU, right here on CBS on WTRF. Alabama's just too good. Too much firepower. LSU won't be able to score enough points. Tua is unlike any quarterback they've had. They're not just a power team now that can overpower you. They now have the ability to throw the ball over the place. They just got too many weapons. Alabama, and it's not even close. Alabama wins this one big over LSU. Last week, I really blew it on Clemson and Florida State, by the way. I picked that upset there. Boy, did I blow that one. I did get Ohio State losing to Purdue the week before. I'll give you 2 upsets this week. Auburn beats number 20, Texas A&M. Virginia Tech beats number 22, Boston College. That's all the time we have this week. Thanks for joining in. We'll see you again next time on The Jamie Bordas Show.